Hello, dear heart. Let's slow everything down now, shall we? Let the day fall away behind you, like the soft closing of a heavy wooden door. You've done enough. You are enough. And now, you deserve rest. Feel your shoulders soften, your breath easing out, slower and slower still. Imagine a blanket over your legs, woolen worn and warm, and a fire crackling gently to one side. Can you hear it? The low pop of a log giving way. The whispering warmth as it dances in amber shadows on the stone floor. Now close your eyes. Let your thoughts become quiet as falling snow. Because tonight, I'll tell you a story. Not of dragons or wars, but of something small, something soft, and something treasured. Our story tonight begins with a spoon. It was a cold evening in a village long forgotten by most maps, nestled between mossy hills and frost-tipped trees. Inside a modest hall, where the hearth had burned since dusk, supper had ended. A single bowl of lentils remained on the table, still warm, steam rising like ghosts in the candlelight. And resting gently inside that bowl was a wooden spoon. Not just any spoon. Oh no, this spoon was old, but loved. The wood was worn to velvet, smooth from years of careful hands. Carved into its handle were soft ivy leaves, curling like little sleeping ferns. And just beneath them, 2 letters, L. No one could say any more who E.L. had been. Perhaps a mother, a shepherd, a baker's daughter, with kind eyes and steady hands. But the spoon remembered. For, in the Middle Ages, you see, spoons were not tossed in drawers. They weren't forgotten or replaced. A spoon was yours. You carried it with you, tied to your belt, through harvest feasts and candlelit dinners, through weddings and winters, passed down, hand to hand, like a lullaby carved into wood. And this spoon, resting so silently in its bowl, had stories nestled inside it, like grain in a sack. The fire popped again, and in the quiet flicker, if you watched closely, you might have seen the ivy leaves on the handle stir, just a little, like they were remembering. Perhaps the spoon was dreaming of a summer long ago, when a girl in a russet dress held it above a pot, stirring thick oat porridge, while her baby brother toddled behind her, chewing on the hem of her skirt. Or maybe of a cold night, not unlike this one, when it was passed across the table to a weary traveler. A man who'd walked far, boots crusted with frost, eyes hollow with hunger. And the spoon, carved and soft with use, brought him the first hot bite of stew he'd tasted in weeks. Each scratch in the grain was a story, each dent a memory. In a time when things were made to last, a spoon held warmth, held stories, held love. Can you picture it now? That quiet, candlelit table, the worn wooden bowl, the weight of time, thick in the air like honey. Outside, the wind whistled gently at the shutters, but inside, all was still, safe, soft. Someone had laid a shawl on the bench. Someone had dried herbs hanging from the rafters. The smell of thyme and wood smoke curled together in the corners of the room. And there, the spoon rested, not forgotten, just still, like it had done so many nights before. And in that stillness, it kept watch. The fire burns lower now, casting long shadows like ribbons along the floor. Its warmth seeps into the stone, into the wood, into you. And the spoon, still resting in its bowl, remains as quiet as a breath. But something begins to stir. Not loudly, not fast, soft as memory. You see, this was not the first home the spoon had known. No. Before this stone cottage, before this quiet village, the spoon had traveled, tied to the belt of a young apprentice. Ida, her name was, with cheeks freckled by sun and fingers stained by berries. She had carved the spoon herself. In the summer her mother fell ill. Using a borrowed knife and a splintered branch of ash wood, she shaped it under the trees. The same trees where she had once played hide-and-seek with her brothers. And when it was done, she pressed her initials at the base, E.L. Ida of Lorne. She stirred stews with it, fed her mother warm broth in winter, dipped it into honey on quiet mornings, and licked it clean while the dew still hung on the thatch roof. And each time she held it, the spoon remembered, because back then, People believed wood held memory, not like a book, not exact, not written, but felt, in the grain, in the way it creaked when it dried, or darkened with oils. They believed the warmth of your hand seeped into the wood, and that kindness, too, stayed in the fibers, that a well-used spoon could remember the love it served. So, when Ida's journey led her far from home, that spoon became her companion. She carried it through forests, so green they looked like velvet, across stone bridges, above rivers that sang their own lullabies, through cities where towers scraped the sky, and through hamlets where goats followed her like children. Wherever she went, the spoon came, to a quiet friend, tied to her belt with a faded ribbon. In times of hunger, she'd find a warm hearth and offer to help, always with her own spoon. People trusted that. They said, if she's brought her own spoon, she means no harm. And so she earned her way, serving soup, grinding herbs, telling stories in exchange for bread, until, many years later, when she was old and quiet and lived in the very cottage we find ourselves in now, she placed her spoon in that very bowl and never took it up again. Now, hundreds of nights have passed, and still, the spoon waits, carved with ivy, initialed by a hand long gone, bathed in candlelight, kissed by fire glow. And as the wind brushes the shutters and the mice tiptoe across the beams, the spoon remembers. Tonight, just as you are resting now, somewhere in the world, another wooden spoon stirs gently in a pot, carried by a different hand, held by someone else who learned that not all treasures glitter. Some treasures are carved, used, passed down, whispered over. And in sleep, we can return to them. The candle burns low now, its flame dipping in rhythm with your breath. And the shadows, those soft, stretching companions of dusk, grow longer coherent, till they melt into stillness. Let your thoughts slow, like leaves falling in autumn, one by one, without rush. Our story continues. It was on a morning of gentle frost, when Ida passed. She left behind her spoon, placed neatly in its bowl, beside the hearth, resting atop a folded cloth of linen, the kind woven by her grandmother's loom. There were no grand ceremonies, no songs, just the silence of snowfall, and the knowing, quiet breath of the cottage. The villagers, out of respect, did not touch the spoon for many days. They believed it needed time to cool, to release the echoes of her touch. Only the old vicar dared step forward, not to move it, but to kneel beside it, his weathered hand hovering just above the handle. And then he whispered, still warm, not from fire, not from sun, but from something left behind, something soft. The villagers said, it's her love, still held in the grain. And so the spoon was passed on, to a niece, then a cousin, then to a wandering merchant's child, who carried it on a belt loop, the ivy leaves facing outward like a blessing. Each new keeper added a mark, a tiny notch, a scratched-in sigil, a drop of beeswax to seal a memory. Over time, it became not just a spoon, but a kind of lullaby made of wood. They say if you held it at night, with your eyes closed and your ear near the bowl, you could hear stories, not spoken in voices, but shown in feelings. The scent of garlic stew simmering over coals, the laughter of children playing outside a stone window, the feeling of wool socks against cold floorboards. Simple things, things that mattered. Take a moment now to picture that. You, sitting beside a hearth in a quiet, mossy home. The air smells of thyme and baked bread. A gentle wind brushes against the shutters, and the spoon rests in your laplight as a feather. The flicker of candlelight dances across your eyelids. Your breathing is slow, soft, matching the rhythm of an old world remembering itself. Now listen closely. The spoon begins to hum, again just for you. It speaks in warmth, in stillness, in the curl of your fingers wrapped gently around its handle. It tells of people you've never met, but whom you somehow know. A shepherd who sang lullabies to the stars. A baker who carved his initials into the spoon with a nail. A mother who stirred honeyed porridge while her child laughed in her arms. And you are part of this tapestry now, not just a listener, but a thread. Somewhere in the dark outside, An owl calls from the trees. Its wings slice the silence, but do not break it. And inside, you feel safe. More than that, you feel held. Let your eyes drift closed now, if they haven't already. Let the soft hush of memory wrap around you like a woolen shawl. And imagine, in your dreams, a world where simple things, a spoon, a shadow, a breath, hold centuries of comfort. You are part of something long and kind and ancient. You are not alone. The night deepens now, and the stars, those old, watchful eyes, glisten like silver threads stitched across black velvet. Let your breath rise slowly and fall. There's nothing left to do. Just be still and feel the hush settle in your chest. Our story continues. After many years, the spoon found its way into the hands of a healer. Her name was Lise. She lived at the edge of the moors, where the wind always sounded like it was singing just below the earth's surface. Lise used the spoon not just for stirring, but for listening. She claimed it could sense a fever before it broke, that it warmed in her hand when a child's cough worsened, that it hummed when sorrow passed through the door disguised as silence. And she never doubted it. Not once. Each evening, as the fire crackled low, and the herbs hung drying in soft bunches, she'd dip the spoon in lentils and whisper a name. Just one. Whoever needed love that night. And somehow, the spoon remembered. Because by dawn, the steam from the pot would drift differently, almost leaning toward the window, as if carrying a blessing down the road. She never asked for coin, only that the spoon be passed on when its time with her was done. When Lise grew old and quiet, she wrapped the spoon in soft linen and tied it with a red wool thread. She gave it to a boy with kind hands and a nervous smile. A boy who'd once brought her a bird with a bent wing and cried when it didn't survive. He took the spoon and carried it for years. Not in his belt, but in his heart. He didn't cook, he didn't carve, but he listened. And the spoon responded in kind. It warmed his pocket in moments of doubt. It made strange, low clicks when he was near kindness. And when he cried, he said the grain of the wood felt softer, as if weeping with him. They lived together for decades, man and memory. And when he too passed, he was buried with it beside him. But here's the thing. The spoon did not stay buried. Some say a root from a nearby ash tree dug down and wrapped itself around the handle. That, over time, the spoon pushed upward through earth and moss, until it lay once more in the open air, glinting faintly in the moonlight like something returned. Others believe it was found by a wandering girl who followed the scent of thyme and singing birds, who stumbled over the spoon as if called. Either way, it came back to the world, because stories always do. And now, as you lie here, in your own quiet room, your breath slowing, your thoughts drifting like clouds across the hush of night, you might wonder where the spoon is now. It could be resting in a museum, behind glass, still warm from unseen hands, or tucked in a drawer, forgotten by someone who has yet to remember what they carry. Or perhaps it's near you, in a bowl, beside a window, waiting. Somewhere, in a village not marked on any map, a cottage stands with crooked windows and a singing hearth. Inside it, a woman named Mirette stirs a pot of rosemary stew. The smell wraps around the beams and coats the old bricks. It's the kind of scent that carries memories. And there, on her worn wooden table, sits the spoon, still carved with ivy, still holding the initials that time hasn't worn smooth. It rests quiet, but not forgotten. Mirette believes the spoon can taste emotions. She doesn't say so aloud, not anymore. But when the pot simmers, she watches how the spoon moves. Does it lean? Does it turn? When grief is in the room, it turns counterclockwise, slow and steady. When laughter bubbles nearby, it lifts light as a feather. She never calls it magic. She calls it memory. Wood listens, she whispered, pressing her palm to the grain. And she's right. In the medieval world, a spoon wasn't just a tool. It was a personal thing. It belonged to you, traveled with you, hung from your belt like a charm. Some even believed that if you stirred soup with a stranger's spoon, you'd see their dreams that night. Now imagine, you're sitting near Mirette's fire. The flames danced softly. The logs cracked like tiny voices. Not words, just comfort. The rain patters gently outside, and the wind hums through the stones. Mirette lifts the spoon, holds it with both hands. Her fingers are worn, but careful, reverent, like she's greeting an old friend. She begins to hum a tune older than she can name, a lullaby passed down like the spoon itself. And as she stirs, the steam rises in slow, swirling shapes. Faces, almost stories, maybe. A knight kneeling, a child spinning in autumn leaves, a healer plucking herbs at dawn, all of it floating just above the pot, vanishing as soon as you blink. But you see them, just barely, like dreams you once had and forgot. The spoon sings along, in its own quiet way, tapping softly, guiding the rhythm. The bowl of lentils thickens, and time melts. Not gone, just stretched thin, like light under a door. You feel it now, don't you? That deep, still center where stories sleep, where every whispered word settles into the corners like candlelight. They say that wooden spoons remember each stew, and every time you stir, the flavors layer over each other. So what you taste is the past, simmered slowly. One dish becomes 1,000 memories, and each one says, you were here, you mattered, you were warm and fed and safe. Mirette passes the bowl to a quiet guest, perhaps you. You hold the warmth in your hands, you raise it to your lips, and suddenly, it's not just lentils and herbs. You taste the oak table it rested on. The hush of nights long gone, 1,000 hands, 1,000 small kindnesses, all folded into one wooden spoon. Back in your own bed, you feel that same warmth. You carry your stories with you, and maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of a fire-lit cottage, and the scent of rosemary, and a spoon that stirs more than soup, a spoon that stirs the heart. The spoon has passed through many hands since Mirette's. Each one left a trace, a warmth, a sorrow, a celebration. After Mirette, the spoon was given to her granddaughter, a soft-spoken girl named Anselma. She kept it tucked into a linen pouch, worn at her side like a secret, not flashy, just quiet and faithful. Anselma was apprenticed to the village baker, rising before the sun most mornings, her breath visible in the frost. The dough would sigh under her palms. The oven would creak and whisper, and the spoon would help her taste. Wooden spoons weren't used by everyone, you know. The rich had metal, shiny, cold, impersonal. But Anselma's spoon, Mirette's spoon, was different. When she dipped it into a custard, the spoon almost seemed to nod. When she tasted memory, like songs baked into flour. And the bakers of old believed a wooden spoon could carry luck. If passed from one baker to the next under a waxing moon, Anselma did just that. She whispered the old rhyme. Moon up, hands true, flour warm, rise anew. And the dough would puff like a dream, round and golden as a sleeping cheek. Now imagine, you're in the bakery with her. The stone walls are warm with rising heat. The scent of cinnamon and toasted grain wraps around your shoulders like a soft shawl. And the only sound is a low hum, her voice singing to the loaves as she sets them gently down. You feel her love in every movement, in how she wipes her palms, in how she stirs the icing glaze with the silent spoon. And when children came to the door, smudged cheeks, bare feet, coins tight in their fists, she gave them honey rolls wrapped in parchment, sometimes free, sometimes with just a smile for payment, because the spoon had taught her that warmth should be passed along, like a loaf, like a lullaby. And every bite they took carried the memories of meals before them, whispers folded into dough. Anselma aged slowly, like dough rising without hurry. And when her hands began to shake, she gave the spoon to a traveling scribe. You might think that odd, but no. The scribe had sat in her shop one rainy morning, jotting verses by the window. He'd traded her a poem for a tart, and when she read the poem, her eyes misted. It spoke of wood and roots, of the way certain objects remember us when we forget ourselves. So she tied the spoon in linen once more and pressed it into his hand. Now the spoon traveled far, tucked among ink bottles and parchment. The scribe wandered through abbeys and courtrooms, and grassy hills where ruins whispered stories in stone. Wherever he ate, he used that spoon. And whenever he wrote, he kept it beside the page. He swore it helped him find the right words. Not quickly, not easily, but honestly. And that's all he asked. You see, dear one, this wasn't just a story of an object. It was a story of care, of presence, of taking time. And in a world that rushes now, this spoon slows us down. It asks, where have you eaten? What hand stirred your soup? What stories did they tell? And, do you remember the warmth? Let your own breath be a stirring motion now. In and out. Slow, gentle turns of the spoon. You are part of this story now. Not a listener, but a keeper of memory. And maybe in some quiet dream tonight, you'll find a carved spoon in your hand, ivy curling around its handle, initials faint beneath your thumb. You won't know how it got there, only that it's meant for you. The scribe, whose name was Cillian, grew older with the spoon by his side. He wrote poems on parchment, soft as moth wings, and tucked them into walls, under thatch, into hollow trees. He said words lasted longer if you gave them away. His favorite place to write was beside the sea, where gulls wheeled like thoughts and the wind curled through his beard like a cat. And always beside him, the spoon. He'd balance it atop his inkpot, not for eating, now, but as a kind of compass. He claimed it would lean ever so slightly toward stories that wanted to be told. He'd laugh softly and say, "Old wood listens." And when it's ready, it tells you where the soul lives. And in his old age, when his hand trembled too much to write, he tucked the spoon into a satchel and gave it to a girl with curious eyes. Her name was Lyra, the daughter of a washerwoman. Her hands always smelled of soap root and lavender, and her feet were quick on whetstone. Lyra wasn't a baker, not a poet, but she saw things, quiet things. A bird threading straw into a rooftop, a shadow beneath the well water. The way her mother's back curved like a question. She took the spoon and didn't ask why. She simply nodded, and from that moment, she carried it everywhere, tucked beside her comb and combing bone. She told no one, but when the spoon was with her, the world felt softer, less jagged, less hurried, as if everything still remembered how to breathe slow. She'd often sit by the river at dusk, the spoon balanced on her knee, watching it catch the last light. The ivy carved along its side looked like it had grown, twisting gently, softening the wood's edge with time. And sometimes, just sometimes, she would hum the rhyme the baker had whispered long ago. Moon up, hands true, flour warm, rise anew. Not for baking, but for comfort, like a lullaby spoken to the world itself. Now, dear one, you've followed this spoon through time, through hands and hearths, through flour, ink, soap, and wind. You've felt its warmth. You've heard its silence. And maybe, just maybe, there's something in your own life just like it. A quiet thing, a loved thing, that holds more than its shape. The spoon passed again, as all beloved things must, from Lyra to her son Tomas, a boy with dirt-stained knees and a laugh that scared crows from the barley. He kept the spoon in his satchel alongside charcoal stubs and smooth stones. He didn't write with it or cook with it. He listened. He said the spoon hummed, softly, like a lullaby made from wind and splinters. Tomas became a shepherd, not out of duty, but because sheep didn't need many words. He carried the spoon up green hills, down muddy valleys, tucked beneath his belt like a knife made of memory. At night, by the fire, he'd hold it up against the stars. The carved ivy glinted faintly green in moonlight, golden in flame, as if it still remembered leaves. Once, during a thunderstorm, he thought he heard voices in the crackling sky, not loud or fearsome, but whispering, telling stories through the wind. He whispered back, with the spoon in his palm. "I'm listening," he said. "I'm always listening." And the thunder stilled, just a little. In the village below, they called him the quiet one with the wooden charm. And maybe they didn't understand, but they knew his animals never strayed, that his fire always caught, that he could soothe a crying child just by letting them hold the spoon. because in its worn handle lived a silence that wasn't empty, but full. And now, dear one, you too have followed its journey. From baker's hand, to poet's pen, to the stillness of a shepherd's palm. Close your eyes, feel the warmth of all those who touched it, all who listened, all who loved. Maybe, just maybe, you're holding it now. Now, we near the end of the path, not a sharp ending, not a loud goodbye, but the kind that slips into slumber, like the sun tucking itself beneath the hill. So breathe and rest, as I tell you how the spoon, still warm from many hands, found its last keeper. Tomas, in his old age, no longer wandered the hills. He sat beside the hearth, a red wool blanket around his knees, and the spoon resting on the mantelpiece. It no longer stirred lentils or scooped broth, it simply listened. One spring, a little girl with braids and clever fingers came to stay with Tomas. Her name was Mira. She asked questions like birds ask the dawn. "What's this?" she'd whisper, pointing to the spoon. And Tomas, with a chuckle like turning pages, would answer, "It's a story in wood. A memory spoon." He showed her the ivy, the initials, the curve of the bowl, smooth as a river pebble. At night, when the fire was low and the walls hummed with age, Myra held the spoon in her lap. She said it made her feel brave, like it remembered her too. And so, when Tomas passed, as all storytellers must, he left no great treasure. Only the spoon, and Myra, with careful hands, wore it on her belt, just as the old folk had done. Years passed, and the village changed. The baker's shop became a cobbler's stall. The barley fields gave way to sheep, but Myra kept the spoon. And each night, as the stars lit the ceiling like scattered seeds, she whispered a little story into it, sometimes of deer, sometimes of soup, sometimes of nothing but breath. And the spoon listened, always. And now, so do you. Yes, you, here in this stillness, this moment between thought and sleep. Let the hush wrap around you, like wool, like ivy, like an old tale, remembered but never rushed. Breathe in once more. Feel the weight of stories, held not in pages, but in wood. Carried through time, carried through hands, carried to you. Our story ends, not with a full stop, but with silence. A spoon rests, a room exhales, and you, dear listener, are safe to sleep. Good night.